Okay, so I think I have enough light for one more. I'm on a DSLR, not my phone, so hopefully I can do like 4000 ISO without too much problem. Collapse. This is a topic that I've been promising. I'm gonna do the broad strokes. How I became aware of this as a thing, basically everybody kind of has an entry point. You realize that something is a major problem, and then you begin to see other areas that are also a problem, and then pretty soon you realize they're all tangled up, and we have a very, very, very big problem. So for me, it was climate change. A friend of mine sent a video to me, and it was I don't want to talk about, I don't want to say his name, but it was basically saying in 10 years or something, humanity was going to be extinct. I mean, that was more than 10 years ago. But the stuff that he outlined, the things that he said, all of the different actions that were happening, all of the different, I guess, reactions to what we're doing, which is shoving a bunch of CO2 in the atmosphere, those are all happening. They're just not happening at the scale he said. He kind of put 2 and 2 together and came up with 22 instead of 4. So after looking into that, I got deep into climate change, and I was super concerned, except that there's nothing you can do about it, because you're 1/8 billionth the problem. You're 1/350 millionth the problem in the US. Like, there's only so much you can do, right? So it's so existential, but it's like, it feels far away. But once you notice something like that, you start to look at other things like overpopulation. We're not there yet, but we keep having more people, and things are distributed unfairly. So the people with more keep getting more, and the people with less keep having less. The next one I think was oil dependence, which is a really big one. The fact that everything, it's not just cars. You think of it, cars, trucks, a huge percentage, like 40% of the oil that we use, a lot of the fuel goes to moving the oil around the world. There are so many oil tankers just trudging through the ocean hither and yon. We are second. We're depending on the ranking, we're usually around second in oil exports. We're also second or third in imports. We drill oil, but we send that oil somewhere else. We go get other people's oil and bring it here because we like the oil that has more stuff in it. And then not only do you have RP1, which is rocket fuel, kerosene, diesel, gas, a bunch of other fuels, but you have all the stuff that plastic you make from oil also, and also oil like for your car. But there's a whole bunch of other things that come out of it, and the more that they can sell, the better the profit margin is. Go to a grocery store and walk down the aisle and see 120 different cereals and 40 different kinds of pasta and all this stuff. Find something that isn't wrapped in an outer or inner package of plastic. Plastic is just so ubiquitous now, and it's because it makes oil more profitable. It goes from being a waste product, all of that ethyl, alcohol, or whatever they make it out of, goes from being a waste product they have to deal with and get rid of to being something that they can sell alongside. And we are not moving away from oil. What little we've done for wind and solar, whatever that is, has only been adding to, above and beyond the oil that we already use. The coal. The coal is slightly less, but propane, or natural gas, is just going through the roof. Let's see, some of the other ones are obviously what we're doing to the ocean, and that comes in reference to things like nitrogen fertilization. A lot of that ends up in the ocean, all of those. And by the way, not only does all the food you have wrapped in plastic at some point, you have to use the fossil fuels to move it from where it's harvested and farmed and sent to grocery stores. Like half the fertilizer that is used to fertilize all of the stuff that you see in the produce department comes from oil or natural gas, fossil fuels. Natural gas they extract the nitrogen from. It is insane once you start reading about all these things and how they all like are tied up in a nice little knot. Biodiversity problems, cryosphere, which is the ice, and how glaciers are disappearing, and you know the poles are obviously, the North Pole especially, losing a lot of ice. And the thing is, all of these companies know it, and they keep doing it anyway because, oh, it's going to make the oil easier to get to. The oil that's the problem that's causing the ice to melt is also the thing that is causing the first thing. Like, it is a real snake eating its tail, Ouroboros type of thing. And all of these problems are knotted together in a way that you can't really stop using fossil fuel, because then you'd have to figure out a place to get all the plastic from. You'd have to figure out a way to get your fertilizer. You'd have to find different things to make out your solar panels out of. And so all these things are tied together in a way that it is almost impossible to stop one, so much less stop like everything. And you go through the stages of grief. Like, you do go through the depression and anger and denial. And at some point, you just got to live in spite of all of that, because you can't change it by yourself. You have to wait for the world to collectively pull its head out of its butt. Like, there's just nothing you can do as even a nation. It has to be everybody kind of all at once. So what can you do? And that is when I talk about collapse, I am talking in terms of pulling back and looking locally at everything. And again, you can't change the world. You can't fundamentally change everything. If you do whatever little you can do, at least you can feel like, well, I'm not part of the problem. That's up to you. Like, if you want to go vegetarian, or, you know, which is much easier as far as farming goes. It's much easier to grow a bunch of stuff for people to eat rather than grow a bunch of stuff to feed to animals for you to eat. It's not for everybody. You want to eat less meat? That's doable. Everything comes at some sort of... Everything is kind of a compromise, though. Like, you could buy an electric car, but then you have to wonder, you should probably look into where the electricity where you live is generated from. Like, I live in Seattle. Most of what we get is hydro. You know, if you live in a place that has coal plants, it's still more efficient to have an electric car rather than, even if you are using electricity from an inefficient source or a polluting source, at least it's efficient as far as energy extraction. But everything comes at a cost. There's no point in just blaming yourself for everything that you can't do, you can't change. It's easy to be nihilistic. It's easy to say, well, it's all going to end. So, you know, why care? But I would argue, like, at some point, whether people like it or not, the planet will make them aware that there's problems. It's going to be obvious because we're going to have a hard time agreeing to things as countries as resources become more scarce, as water becomes harder to find, and it goes from being something that's kind of just in the ground most places to being tainted by mining or fracking or any of the other things that happen. But I would argue, first of all, become more resilient. And by that I mean look to the things you need as locally as possible. If you live somewhere rural and you can grow food, freaking grow food. Like, it is satisfying when you get to harvest your own whatever you can grow where you are. And it may be a very useful skill at some point. Like, if you're talking collapse and things begin to, not all at once, but fall apart, you may start to find that if you live in a rural area, you may want to invite people you know to live in your area so that you can all pool resources. You may want to go back to something closer to a subsistence lifestyle, something closer to the ground, something, you know, when food becomes far more expensive. Like, for example, if the US is no longer the world reserve currency, your currency is worth garbage almost immediately. So food is going to be expensive. Everything's going to be expensive. If you can grow food, I mean, what's more important when things fall apart? You need food, you need a place to live. And that is going to be something that you're going to have to be able to figure out. But those are skills that are going to be super useful if this happens. And if it doesn't, if you can find some way to grow your own food anyway, like, I can tell you, it's very satisfying to do. The next thing I would say is acquiring skills. Like, if you have an older car that you can work on yourself, that's going to be super handy. If you look in a lot of places that have gone through some sort of collapse, like Russia, like Cuba went through some, obviously not being able to get stuff from outside, they got creative and they stuck with old things that they could fix themselves. If you have a brand new car, you might not be able to do that. Other skills, like being able to fix things in general, the more things you can fix and understand, again, it's satisfying, but also kind of come in super handy. The last thing is disaster preparedness. And that doesn't mean you're preparing for the zombie apocalypse. Because again, like I've said before, you probably don't want to live through that anyway. And also there's already like full on people completely prepared for that situation that will just come take your stuff. And it's going to it'll be so much worse than you can imagine. So what I recommend is picking the biggest natural disaster that happens where you are. If you live on the eastern seaboard, hurricanes, obviously. I live in the Pacific Northwest, 9-point plus earthquake that's going to happen at some point, the Cascadia subduction earthquake zone. There's still Mount Rainier. Glacier Peak is not far away. There's multiple mountains, active volcanoes in this area. I was alive for Mount St. Helens. I remember vividly, even though I think I was 5 at the time. But pick whatever disaster is close to you. There's something regardless. Drought, heat wave, cold shock, like exploding tree kind of cold, like that we're having now back east. I have never seen something like that before. I watched a bunch of video of freaking exploding trees. That's nuts. But pick those disasters, pick whatever it is in your region or where places you like to visit, and get ready for those. Because if you're ready for the 9.2 earthquake that we could have, then a 7 or 8, provided, you don't get injured or something, you'll be fine because you'll be more than ready. Things like if wildfires and things like that, your preparation is probably to have stuff in GTFO at the soonest possibility. Being able to relocate, being able to have all those important things with you, having a go bag, having a list that you can grab, and I need all of these important documents. I need my insurance documents. I need checkbook. I need like all the cards. I need all sorts of things that you want to grab quickly. Like you can at least make a list if you don't actually make a bag full. And then I'm going to go into things like radios, things like different kits that you can make. But this is not something that is as overwhelming as collapse itself. Being able to prepare for these things makes you more prepared for everything. Like if you have a disaster kit in which you rotate some canned food, maybe you have some MREs or something, you know, even if there's just the power goes out for a few days, you're going to be so much better off if you have, like, I have a couple boxes of MREs just because I'm sick and I kind of like them. They're great for camping, but if the power goes out, I can have hot food, and they're good for, the ones I have are good for at least a few more years, and then decent for probably another 10. Preparing is something that people will make it sound like you're getting ready for the end of the world. And if you are, you're probably doing it wrong. Like if you have a bunker in your basement, that's not going to help you. If there's 350 million Americans that are starving, prepare in such a way that you are working with the people around you rather than against you, because a lot of people like to use Katrina as the example of, oh, they were just robbing everybody. And yeah, in some situations where everybody is obliterated and didn't listen and didn't evacuate, yes, terrible things happen. But in most disasters, the person that's going to dig somebody out of the rubble of a collapsed building is going to be the people that live around them, almost without fail. You can go through any earthquake videos, any sort of documentary regarding any sort of natural disaster. You'll see people that live there. You'll see people that traveled there to help. And in collapse, you're talking about kind of a permanent simplification and a step down in complexity in society. They doesn't necessarily happen at once. So the more you can prepare, the more you can start to make connections with people you know that have skills that are going to come in handy. The more skills that you have that you can provide other people in your family and friend groups, the better off you are. That's why I'm going to talk about this a lot, because I don't know what else to do, to be honest. Engaging politically is something that you can do if you feel like there is a path for that to change. I don't feel like there's a good path for changing in the way that needs to change. I think the only way that will happen is if things fall apart a little bit and we can actually start to build things up in a better way, a way that benefits everybody and not just billionaires. But that's my opinion. You know, do whatever makes you feel better about the situation. And in the end, things are going to happen the way they do. All you can do is continue on as best you can and try to enjoy what you can. Get togethers with friends and family. Still do that and try to forget about it occasionally. But I'm going to try to help with a plan to actually do something to make you feel better. Hopefully. But that's all for this. I hope this is going to help.